Hey, good evening, everybody. This is my audience for my week 2 informative speech. So they can go have a seat now so we can get started. When I was 18 years old, I got my first fake ID. Some friends and I had gone out drinking and we had had too much to drink, but we were 18 years old and we needed to get home, so we decided to drive ourselves. On the way home, we had gotten into an accident, but we were so scared that we just kept going. We went home and went to sleep. The next morning I had saw in the news that we had actually killed somebody in that accident, and the police were looking for any information that anybody had. Now, what if I was to tell you that if that was simply a story or if that was really true? What would you say? Identifying the truths within the lies and the gray areas in between is possible. Now, some of you may be saying, well, yeah, sure, that's what a lie detector does for us. But does it? What is a lie detector test actually telling us? Well, it tells us 3 things. It tells us whether somebody's being truthful, whether somebody is not being truthful, and sometimes it'll come back inconclusive. And that means that it cannot accurately tell us whether somebody is being truthful or not. The difference between actual and fictional traits of deception are sometimes the most microscopic and unnoticeable of details, all of which will fall into 2 categories, either verbal and nonverbal. We're going to look at those further in just a minute, but let's first look at some indicators that we're all already aware of. So what are they? The signs that we all already know immediately point out that somebody is not being truthful. Of course, we all know that when a person is not able to make direct eye contact, that means that they're lying, right? Or when a person just can't sit still. They're constantly fidgeting, biting their fingernails, scratching their heads, tapping their hands and feet. Those are all telltale signs that somebody is not telling the truth, aren't they? Actually, no. All of these are false stereotypes that are essentially meaningless unless you know how to connect them together to develop a pattern. So, if all of these signs that we have always known to be truth tellers actually are not, what then is a true sign of deceit? Well, the reality is that there is no one sign or handful of signs that are either black or white, truth or lie. Looking at an example of a suspect interrogation, what are the real signs that can be looked at as indicators? Just as in a lie detection machine, it is important to establish a baseline. Having a regular conversation with meaningless questions and statements you already know to be true. Upon doing this, it is not the actual answer that you're paying attention to, but rather how they are responding. Are they sitting up or are they slouched? What is their tone? What are their facial expressions? Are they generally very calm or are they very anxious? And then we're going to be looking for how those behaviors changes throughout the conversation. Now, clearly those were signs that we would classify as nonverbal. So looking for verbal signs of deception, it again is important to simultaneously be watching for behaviors and listening to how a person speaks to establish that baseline. Generally, even a truthful person will be very nervous when being interrogated. So fidgeting and stuttering might just be that person's nervous behaviors. It is when we notice the changes over the duration that we can piece together different signs to get a more accurate picture of the truth. Things like repeating a question before answering the question. Using excessive verbal pauses such as Also, a very important indicator is noticing inconsistent verb tense. For example, if a person is being questioned in a missing persons investigation and insists in having nothing to do with the disappearance, but yet is already speaking of this person and situation in past tense, that may be a very important indicator that this person knows more than they are willing to share. So now that we know that there is no silver lining when it comes to detecting deceit, but rather a combination of very fine-tuned skills that are working together at the same time, that is, we want to make sure that the verbal is connected to the nonverbal, that what they are saying matches what they are doing. So again, if I ask you, if I was really involved in a fatal hit and run when I was 18, or if I was involved in a hit and run at all, what would you say? Okay, everybody, thanks for watching. This is my week 2 speech on cues of deception. And again, here's my audience.